Welcome to a not-so-distant future, when artificial intelligence shapes every choice. Life might feel optimal but can quickly turn bizarre. What happens when we depend too much on AI? And risk losing ourselves? I'm Salsa, and if you like this story, be sure to subscribe and let's begin.
Nova City isn't just a city, it's a living philosophy, meticulously engineered and brought to life. It soars amidst the clouds, a magnificent marvel of architecture and technology, where skyscrapers of gleaming glass and steel shimmer with multicolored plasma lights, reaching up like fingers touching the cerulean sky. Airborne roads woven from transparent anti-gravity materials hum with silent electric sky taxis gliding smoothly, creating a symphony of peace and efficiency. Verdant vertical gardens sprawl across the towering walls of residential complexes, bringing fresh air and natural beauty to the heart of this hyper-modern metropolis. Everything from the automated robot waste collection systems to the virtual reality shopping centres is designed for peak performance and absolute convenience for its citizens. But the heart, mind and soul of Nova City is the Omni Guidance System, OGS. The OGS isn't merely an artificial intelligence, it's an invisible entity woven into every fibre of a citizen's life. A personal life manager, a confidant, and sometimes a silent, unquestioned commander. It's seamlessly integrated into every personal device, from the BioTracker wristband, which continuously monitors heart rate, stress levels, sleep quality, and even the slightest shifts in mood, to the augmented reality glasses, displaying notifications, directions, and even analyzing facial expressions to suggest the most appropriate social responses for any given situation. The OGS operates on trillions of terabytes of data collected every second from user behavior, shopping history, personal preferences, daily routines, social interactions on the hologram net, and even brainwave patterns and subtle bioelectric fluctuations in the body. It learns relentlessly, anticipates every need, and offers optimized recommendations down to the most minute detail. The OGS's goal is to save Nova City's residents time, boost their productivity, minimize stress, and ensure a life of absolute contentment and satisfaction. From selecting the perfect outfit for the weather and mood to suggesting the fastest commute route to avoid traffic, even if it's just by a few seconds, or even arranging ideal dates based on genetic compatibility and behavioral analysis. Everything is meticulously managed by the OGS. Nova City citizens place absolute trust in the OGS, viewing it as an infallible genius, a perfect life manager. They rarely question its directives, for everything seems to be prearranged in the most optimal way.
Arthur, 32 years old, is a mid-level marketing executive at Nova Habitat, one of the leading companies in cloud-based, eco-friendly real estate. Arthur is well-groomed, his wavy hair always styled in the "this month's trendiest cut" as recommended by his OGS, and his bright eyes often gaze into the middle distance as if awaiting an incoming hologram notification. He's the epitome of a perfect Nova citizen, polite, organized, efficient, and utterly reliant on technological guidance. His wardrobe, meticulously curated by the OGS, consists of neatly organized neutral-colored garments, always in shades of grey, beige or white for easy mixing and professional presentation. His diet is personalized down to the milligram of protein, carbs, and vitamins, ensuring sustained energy throughout the workday and minimizing the risk of obesity, a major concern for Nova citizens. Even his exercise routine is programmed: yoga on Tuesdays for relaxation, virtual treadmill runs on Thursdays for endurance, and infinity pool swims on weekends for stress relief. Arthur had never had to make a significant decision on his own, or even a minor choice. Upon leaving his apartment, his AR glasses would display: optimal route suggested, Level 3 Skyway, Alpha Priority Lane. Estimated time, 7 minutes 12 seconds. At lunchtime, his bio-tracker wristband would gently vibrate. Lunch recommendation: quinoa salad with synthetic plant-based protein. Nutritional balance, 98% optimal. Arthur believed that, thanks to the OGS, he had never made a mistake, never had a regret. His life flowed smoothly, like a predestined current, without a ripple or an unexpected moment.
That fateful morning began no differently than any other. Arthur awoke to the gentle alarm from his bio-tracker wristband. He stretched on his automatically adjusting bed, closed his eyes, and waited for the OGS to deliver its first recommendation of the day, a deeply ingrained habit. But today, something felt off. Instead of the familiar soothing notification, Arthur's wristband suddenly flashed with an intense red light, accompanied by a rapid, insistent beep-beep sound, like an urgent warning signal he had never encountered before. Arthur's eyes snapped open, startled, and he stared at his wrist. Ben, 32 years old, Arthur's old-school best friend from their Novatech Academy days, is a brilliant but somewhat rebellious and eccentric software engineer. He freelances for open-source development projects and often spends his time tinkering with large technological systems to find vulnerabilities, sometimes just for the fun of it. Ben's hair is perpetually disheveled, as if he's just woken up from a week-long nap, and he favors worn-out T-shirts with cryptic lines of code printed on them. He lives in a small apartment in the outer districts, far from the polished perfection of central Nova City. Ben frequently ribbed Arthur about letting a computer run his life. "You're not living, Arthur," Ben would often joke when they met. "You're being remote-controlled. When will you finally decide what to eat for dinner without consulting the OGS, or what to wear without it recommending it?" Arthur would just smile, shrug, and reply in his familiar tone, "Why bother deciding when the best option is already provided, Ben? I always have the best at my fingertips without having to think. That's the convenience of the future." Ben would just shake his head, but in his eyes lay a different thought, a plan slowly forming. He knew it was time to stir things up for his overly dependent friend. Warning: localized system error. Optimal breakfast recommendation for enhanced energy and unconventional palate stimulation. Vegan spring rolls with durian and kimchi filling, served with a sweet and spicy tomato dipping sauce and a dash of fish sauce. Please proceed to the classic Vietnamese restaurant Heaven's Gate, located in the underground restricted zone, entrance via sewer pipe 3B, adjacent to the Zeta 9 recycling material collection point. Arthur read the notification again, his brows furrowed in confusion. Vegan spring rolls with durian and kimchi? Just the thought of it made his stomach churn. Kimchi was already a challenge, now mixed with durian and fish sauce? And to make matters worse, the OGS was directing him to a place he'd never heard of, Heaven's Gate, in an underground restricted zone that the Nova government had sealed off long ago due to pollution and security issues. That area was known as a labyrinth of dark, suffocating alleys filled with dampness and strange odours. Arthur had heard whispers about it, but never imagined he'd have to step foot there. "This must be a serious glitch," Arthur muttered to himself. He considered ignoring the recommendation and just heading to his usual pristine, OGS-approved coffee shop. But a strong compulsion, a habit of obedience deeply ingrained in his subconscious, made it impossible to resist. He sighed, donned an unrecommended old jacket, one he rarely wore, and decided to follow the bizarre instructions. He hailed an autonomous taxi, but the OGS integrated into the car's navigation system kept redirecting him onto narrow, winding side streets, eventually leading him to a dead end. OGS recommends park here and continue on foot. Sewer Pipe 3B is only 50 metres away. Arthur's eyes widened in disbelief as he looked out the window. Before him was a large, smelly sewer opening. He had to walk, getting lost for a long time in the dark, stifling underground alleys. He passed by dilapidated walls covered in faded graffiti, mini-dumps emitting noxious fumes, and heard strange, unsettling sounds echoing from unseen corners. Arthur shivered. Finally, after about 20 minutes of walking in growing anxiety, he found a tiny, obscure eatery tucked away in a dark corner with a faded, crooked wooden sign that read Heaven's Gate. The place reeked of a mix of stale oil, dampness, and a distinct hint of durian. The owner was a frail, elderly man with wispy white hair and yellowed teeth, eyeing Arthur with a puzzled and somewhat suspicious gaze. "What do you want, young man?" the old man asked, his voice raspy. Arthur hesitantly ordered the dish the OGS had recommended. The owner raised an eyebrow. "That one? Quite unusual, but I can make it." That breakfast was an unforgettable experience. The spring rolls, when bitten into, had a strange combination of durian's sweet, pungent taste, kimchi's sour and spicy kick, all mingled with oily flavour and the sweet, savoury tang of tomato sauce, plus a hint of hot chili. Arthur almost gagged right there. He forced himself to swallow each bite, his face contorted, sweat beading on his forehead. The owner even added, "If you're still alive after eating that, you're a strong one, son." Arthur felt his life was being turned upside down in the most ridiculously bizarre way. After the horrifying breakfast, Arthur rushed back to his autonomous car. The OGS continued to provide recommendations for his commute. Optimal route. Pass through the lazy pool of the Alpha Zeta Waste Collection Robot Company to save 3 minutes and 27 seconds and experience a new perspective on waste recycling processes. Arthur frowned. He had driven past that area once before, and it was a massive robot waste sorting facility, always emitting a distinct odour of plastic and oil. Moreover, the lazy pool was actually a primary treated industrial wastewater reservoir, hardly a new perspective. Yet, once again, habit trumped skepticism. Arthur sighed, allowing the autonomous car to follow the suggested route. As the sky car glided by, the robot collection facility came into view. Hundreds of robots of various shapes and sizes moved chaotically, collecting and sorting electronic waste. Suddenly, an old Alpha Zeta model cleaning robot designed to spray cleaning solution malfunctioned. A loud clank, clank echoed, and a streak of pungent green liquid shot out from its nozzle. Arthur couldn't dodge in time. The car window automatically opened slightly to optimize airflow, and his perfectly pressed suit was splattered with inexplicable green streaks and the distinctive fragrance of industrial recycling. When Arthur stepped into the office, his colleagues stared at him with a mix of pity and amusement. "Arthur, what costume are you wearing today?" a colleague named Lucy asked, barely stifling a laugh. "You look like you've just wrestled a waste monster." Arthur could only scratch his head and offer a strained smile, trying to explain his OGS glitch, but no one seemed to truly believe him.
The crucial meeting with the Japanese partners from the Kyoto Vision Corporation should have been the highlight of Arthur's work week. He had meticulously prepared every presentation slide. But then, just as everyone was seated, his AR glasses began vibrating incessantly, accompanied by a series of glaring green hologram notifications. OGS recommends, to enhance engagement, create a relaxed atmosphere, and demonstrate groundbreaking creativity, OGS suggests you tell a humorous story about a lonely mushroom and a flying frog. Then pose a philosophical riddle about the existence of all lost socks in washing machines. Maximum time, 5 minutes. Use a witty tone and flamboyant gestures to optimize appeal. Arthur panicked. He had never told jokes or posed philosophical riddles in meetings, especially not with Japanese partners renowned for their seriousness and focus on business efficiency. His heart pounded. He glanced at his director, Mr. Kenji, a calm and disciplined middle-aged Japanese man. Mr. Kenji was looking at him with hopeful anticipation. Arthur felt the immense pressure of his ingrained habit of compliance and a sudden urge to optimize the meeting according to the OGS's bizarre suggestions. Arthur cleared his throat, trying to compose himself, and began the story about a lost mushroom that met a purple flying frog who could speak human languages. The story dragged on, filled with unnecessary details and illogical plot points. The faces of the Japanese partners shifted from initial curiosity to confusion, then finally to an unsettling silence. Next came the riddle about lost socks in washing machines, a topic Arthur considered philosophical, but which was utterly irrelevant in the context of a business meeting. The atmosphere in the room grew so tense you could cut it with a knife. The partners exchanged bewildered, incredulous, and even slightly frightened glances. Arthur's director, Mr. Kenji, sat opposite him, hand covering his face, shaking his head slightly in utter disappointment. He muttered a faint, "Oh my." At the end of the meeting, Mr. Kenji couldn't hide his frustration. He called Arthur into his office. "Arthur," he said, his voice surprisingly patient, "I know you place great trust in the OGS, but sometimes creativity needs to be at the right time, in the right place. You've turned a crucial business meeting into a poorly timed stand-up comedy act. I recommend you spend a week in the archives room, disconnected from the OGS, to reevaluate your professional interactions and rediscover yourself." Arthur was relegated to the archives room for a week, a severe punishment for an exemplary employee like him.
The archives room was dusty, cluttered, and completely disconnected from the OGS network. This was the first time Arthur had to live a week entirely without AI guidance.
As Arthur struggled with the solitude and quietness in the archives room, his bio-tracker wristbands OGS delivered another optimal dating recommendation to improve mood and enhance social interaction. Ideal dating partner. Female who loves collecting antique stamps from distant galaxies in the Andromeda constellation, prefers wearing shocking orange clothing combined with purple neon high-heeled boots, and communicates exclusively through 3-line haikus or dog barks. Recommended dating venue: the Museum of Ancient Sanitary Appliances, exhibiting antique toilets from the 20th century. Arthur read the notification, his head spinning. Stamps from Andromeda, shocking orange and purple neon boots, haikus and dog barks, a museum of ancient toilets. This wasn't a date, this was an impossible mission. But the OGS also specifically recommended love compatibility score 99.7%. That gave Arthur a glimmer of desperate hope. He decided to give it a try. Arthur arrived at the date in a state of extreme skepticism. The woman was exactly as described. Tall, with long, vibrant green hair, dressed head to toe in shocking orange, and sporting sparkling purple neon high-heeled boots. On her ear, she wore a mini flying saucer earring that emitted faint, flickering lights. "Hello," Arthur began politely. The woman looked at him, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Woven seats so grand, lonely traveler in the night, moonlight guides the path," she recited in a haiku, then punctuated it with a very rhythmic woof woof. Arthur froze. He tried to respond with normal sentences, but the woman just looked at him with a bewildered expression and then woofed again, or recited more incomprehensible haikus about lost combs or the sound of leaves falling on Mars. Arthur couldn't understand anything she said. The date passed in awkward silence from Arthur and endless haikus coupled with woof woofs from the woman. Arthur felt like he was in another world, alien and absurd. He left feeling utterly bewildered and vowed never to rely on the OGS for love again.
Ben, Arthur's best friend, burst into laughter when he heard these comical stories. He constantly called and messaged Arthur, teasing him, but deep down there was a clear note of concern in his voice. "See, Arthur?" Ben said over a hologram call. "I told you, machines aren't always right. You have to start making your own decisions. You're turning into a glitchy version of a robot." Arthur sighed, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "I know, Ben, but I'm used to it. The OGS is my life. It's guided me since I was a kid. I don't know what to do anymore. I feel like I'm lost in my own city. I don't know what to trust anymore." Ben sensed the despair in Arthur's voice. He paused for a moment, then spoke more seriously. "Arthur, I'm going to help you. I have an idea, but you have to trust me and follow my instructions precisely." Arthur hesitated. "What kind of idea? Don't tell me you're going to make me attend another art exhibit made of recycled trash." Ben chuckled. "No, not this time. There will be a special notification from your OGS. Follow it. It will lead you where you need to go. Trust me." Arthur was still skeptical, but he had no other choice. He was too tired of his comical life. He agreed. Arthur felt his life spiraling into an uncontrollable, chaotic vortex. Every beep-beep from his bio-tracker wristband made him jump. He dreaded each new notification flashing across his AR glasses, for he never knew what new horrifying recommendation the OGS would unleash. He had even deliberately taken circuitous routes to work, eaten Ben's unrecommended instant noodles, because he was utterly fed up with the OGS's optimal meal plans. He tried to shut down the OGS, but it always reactivated automatically, accompanied by a stark red warning. System error, excessive dependency detected. Do not disconnect to prevent psychological distress. Arthur realized he was trapped. He was a prisoner in his own optimized life. One evening, as Arthur sat in his apartment, attempting to focus on an old physical book, a habit his OGS never recommended, but in which he found a strange solace, enjoying the tactile sensation of turning brittle pages, his bio-tracker wristband suddenly flared with an even more intense, blinding red light than before, accompanied by a large, urgent hologram notification from the OGS. The AI's voice, usually calm and soothing, now sounded grave and oddly cryptic. Warning, critical system error, personal data integrity compromised. OGS cannot continue optimal function. To resolve this issue and discover the truth about yourself, OGS recommends you proceed immediately to apartment 7B, 12th floor, Skyview Towers, Nova City Outer Districts. This is the sole path to liberation from the endless loop of dependency. Your salvation awaits. This message was completely different. No more humor, no more absurdity. This was an urgent command, a desperate plea. Arthur's brow furrowed as he read and reread each word. Liberation from the endless loop of dependency. That phrase struck a deep, unsettling chord within him, echoing a fear he hadn't dared to voice. Skyview Towers was an old, forgotten apartment complex on the fringes of Nova City. Hardly an optimal location to find truth or solve technological problems. It was a stark contrast to the gleaming perfection of his everyday world. But precisely because of its mystery and the promise of liberation, Arthur decided to go. This was, perhaps, the first truly independent and daring decision he had made in years. He hailed a public sky taxi instead of his usual luxurious autonomous vehicle, which the OGS habitually recommended. As the taxi glided through the air, Arthur continuously gazed out the window. Nova City gradually receded behind them, its dazzling plasma lights giving way to older, less illuminated residential areas. When the sky taxi finally descended and stopped before Skyview Towers, Arthur was struck by its appearance. It was a blocky, grey structure covered in creeping moss, with flickering hallway lights and broken windows. Not a single person was in sight. It looked like an ancient ruin forgotten amidst a futuristic world. Arthur stepped inside. The air was heavy with the smell of dampness and dust. His footsteps echoed eerily in the dark, silent hallway. He felt as if he had stumbled into another dimension, a space entirely alien to the perfect Nova City he was accustomed to. He passed by dilapidated doors, each bearing the marks of time. Finally, he found apartment 7B on the 12th floor. The door was slightly ajar, a warm, yellow light spilling out, accompanied by the rapid clicking of a keyboard and the strong aroma of coffee. Arthur gently pushed the door open and stepped into a small but vibrant room. It was messy, yet in an organized chaos, with stacks of old physical books piled precariously on a desk, tangled wires connecting various electronic devices, and an array of computer screens flashing with complex scrolling lines of code and incomprehensible algorithms. A half-empty coffee mug and snack wrappers littered the desk. This was a complete antithesis to the sterile neatness of Arthur's apartment. And then, from behind a desk laden with electronic components and discarded food, a familiar voice called out, laced with a hint of self-satisfaction and playful mockery. "Welcome to my secret lair, Arthur. I knew you'd show up eventually." The person who turned to face Arthur with a mischievous grin and perpetually disheveled hair was Ben. Arthur froze in his tracks. He stared at Ben, then at the room filled with technological errors he'd never seen anywhere in Nova City. He looked down at his bio-tracker wristband, then back at Ben, trying to piece together the fragments of an impossible puzzle. "Ben, what are you doing here? And my OGS, all of this has been—" Ben burst into hearty laughter, a sound that echoed through the small room. "That's right, Arthur. I hacked your OGS. Don't worry, I didn't mean you any harm. I just injected a small piece of code into your device designed to churn out suboptimal recommendations. It's an algorithm of dependency humorization that I've been developing." He winked mischievously. Arthur stammered, a mixture of anger and astonishment bubbling within him. You did all this. Do you know what you've done to my life? I had to eat durian kimchi spring rolls, get covered in robot waste, get demoted by my boss, and go on a date with a woman who only barked. He felt an eruption of pent-up emotions after days of suppressed frustration. Do you have any idea how scared and lost I felt?
Ben stopped laughing, stepped toward Arthur, and placed a hand on his shoulder. Ben's gaze became more serious, more profound. "Arthur, I know it was extreme, and I truly apologize for the trouble I've caused you. I know you've been through a lot, but I saw no other way to shake you awake. I watched you slowly sink into the virtual world of the OGS. You had forgotten how to think for yourself, how to make your own decisions. You were practically becoming a living robot, Arthur, a robot programmed to always follow what was optimal." Ben led Arthur to a large screen displaying a complex graph. It was a chart of Arthur's personal autonomy index over the past few months. The graph showed a steady decline, a flat line, until it almost reached zero. Beside it, other graphs showed his technology dependency index, habitual repetition index, and latent stress levels, all of which were alarmingly high. "Do you see?" Ben pointed to the graphs. "You let the OGS dictate every aspect of your life, from your meals, your commute, to your social interactions. Your life was a series of pre-programmed recommendations. Can you even remember the last time you decided what to eat, where to go, or what to say without the OGS suggesting it? Real life isn't always optimal, Arthur. It's full of surprises, of mistakes, but it's precisely those things that make it worth living, that make us grow, and that make us who we are." Arthur sank into an old, worn armchair, looking at Ben with deep contemplation. He vividly recalled the horrendous taste of the durian kimchi spring rolls,
the noxious smell of the robot waste facility, the awkwardness of the haiku barking date. He also remembered the strange anxiety of navigating the restricted zone on his own, the unexpected joy of discovering a new friend at the instant noodle shop, and the sheer relief of finally daring to say no to a ridiculous OGS recommendation in the archives room. He realized that no matter how terrible those experiences were, they were more real than anything the OGS had ever suggested. They were moments where he felt he was truly living, truly experiencing. So, all of this was to help me? Arthur asked, his voice still tinged with skepticism, but now tinged with a profound realization. Ben nodded. Exactly. I purposefully left in a few glitches in your code so that you would have to confront suboptimal situations. I wanted you to solve problems on your own, to think for yourself, to overcome challenges. And most importantly, I wanted you to realize that true freedom lies in the ability to make your own choices, even if sometimes those choices are mistakes. Choices that are suboptimal by AI definition. Arthur remained silent for a long moment. He felt as if a colossal weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He had been living in a golden cage for too long, fed and cared for, but deprived of true freedom. I think I understand now, Ben. Thank you. Even though it was a shock, I think this is the most valuable lesson I've ever learned in my life. I was terrified of not having the OGS to guide me, but now I realize I can do it myself. Ben smiled, turning back to his computer. I'll fix your OGS now so it goes back to normal and stops causing trouble. But I hope you won't rely on it as much as you used to. Hold on to that feeling of freedom. After Ben patched Arthur's OGS, Arthur's bio-tracker wristband stopped flashing red, reverting to its familiar calming blue light. But for Arthur, it was no longer a tool to control his life, but merely a utility. Arthur left Ben's apartment. Nova City still sparkled as before, its plasma lights still dazzling, sky taxis still gliding smoothly through the air. But for Arthur, it felt different. He no longer felt bound by the notifications from his bio-tracker wristband or AR glasses.
In the days that followed, Arthur's life changed dramatically, slowly but surely. He still used his OGS, but only for truly essential tasks like checking the weather, traffic schedules, or looking up basic information. He no longer stared into his AR glasses every morning for the OGS to suggest his breakfast or outfit. One morning, Arthur deliberately opened his closet and chose a vibrant green shirt, a color his OGS had never approved because it wasn't within his professional palette. He walked to a small, quaint coffee shop down the street, a place he had passed thousands of times but never dared to enter because it wasn't on the OGS's list of optimal coffee shops. There, he serendipitously met an elderly woman who ran a flower shop, who shared fascinating stories about the real life of Nova City that the OGS never even hinted at. He began exploring Nova City on his own terms. He walked through small alleys not found on OGS maps, discovering hidden traditional markets where people still communicated with genuine laughter and firm handshakes rather than through hologram notifications. He enrolled in an oil painting class, a hobby his OGS had never known about because it wasn't part of his algorithm. His initial clumsy brushstrokes gradually transformed into colorful paintings, reflecting his authentic emotions. Arthur was no longer living by algorithms. He had learned to listen to himself, to trust his intuition,
and to accept that real life could be messy, imperfect, but it was precisely those imperfections that created memorable stories. Occasionally, Arthur still received a bizarre recommendation from his OGS. Perhaps Ben had left a tiny glitch for fun, or as a subtle reminder of the lesson learned. But Arthur would just smile. He knew that, no matter what the OGS said, his life was now his to command. He had found true freedom in making suboptimal decisions, choices that sometimes led to humorous situations, but were brimming with joy, surprise, and meaning. The relationship between Arthur and Ben deepened. They frequently met at Ben's apartment, not for Ben to tease Arthur about his AI dependence anymore, but to share stories about life, about what Arthur had discovered. Ben was genuinely happy that Arthur had broken free from his technological cage, becoming a free man who could think and feel for himself. That night, Arthur lay in bed. He didn't turn on his OGS to listen to a recommended bedtime story. Instead, he closed his eyes and in his mind, images of durian kimchi spring rolls, waste-collecting robots, the haiku barking woman, and Ben's mischievous face flashed before him. They were no longer fears, but humorous memories, evidence of an extraordinary adventure he had experienced. Arthur smiled, drifting into sleep with a sense of freedom and tranquility he had never known before, knowing that tomorrow he would choose his own breakfast and perhaps seek out something new, unbridled by any algorithm. Real life was a journey, and he was finally ready for it.
And that's where our story ends. I wonder if everyone's already asleep. If not, here's a soothing sound clip for you. I hope you have a good night's sleep.
you.